Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Drexel University Sport Coaching Leadership webinar. This evening, we're joined by Caleb Mezzy, one of our doctoral students, and his panel of experts to talk about the holistic approach to today's baseball player. Just a quick ad for what we've got coming up next week. Tammy Mertens from New Zealand Netball will be sharing with us some of the strategies that they're using down in New Zealand regarding coaching online. So tonight, I'm thrilled to have Caleb Mezzy, as I mentioned, one of our doc students, a professor at Neumann College, to talk about this interesting topic, particularly for the time that we're in, and his panel of folks in and around Major League Baseball. So Caleb, welcome, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So as you guys heard from Cam, I'm Caleb Mezzy. I am a sport management professor at Neumann University and a doctoral student at Drexel. I am doing some research centered around career transition for professional baseball players, but really what we want to talk about today and tonight is the focus on today's baseball player, the holistic off-the-field approach to that. We have a very esteemed panel. We have a former player, we have a mental skills coordinator, and a life skills coordinator. And I think that both of them, all of them, they offer something different to this conversation. So without further ado, I would like them to introduce themselves individually, and then we'll get into some questions for today. The way this is going to work is I'm going to offer 4 questions, and then depending on the time, we're going to open it up for Q&A for the audience. So Jeremy, if you would like to go first.
I'm Jeremy Wolf, Executive Director of More Than Baseball. We're a nonprofit built to help minor league baseball players get housing, food, equipment, career services, financial guidance, mental health coaching, a plethora of stuff that they can use off the field that will ultimately help them with recovery and development and performance on the field. I played 2 years with the New York Mets. I was drafted in the 31st round out of Trinity University and played 2 years with the Mets, 1 year in Kingsport and 1 year in Brooklyn. Got injured to end my career and got released about a month after my injury before I could walk yet after my back surgery. So for me, the idea of building something that'll help players kind of stemmed from my time playing at the lower levels. And then right when I was released, there was a shortage of information and resources for me to get into the next step of my life.
Zach, Jen, who would like to go next?
I'll go ahead. My name is Jennifer Wolf. I'm the life skills coordinator with the Cleveland Indians. Prior to starting this role, I spent some time with a few different teams in different roles. I interned with the Red Sox and the Nationals, spent a few years with Major League Baseball, working both in their New York office and in the Dominican Republic, helping to set up the registration process, so getting amateur players ready to sign before July 2nd, which is the big signing date for international players. And then I spent 7 years with the Mets, where I was part of the team that brought Jeremy on and hopefully took good care of him while he was at the Mets. Was there for 7 years as the player development coordinator before starting with the Indians last year. My role at the life skills coordinator is kind of handling a lot of the off-field stuff for the players, so teaching them about finances, budgeting, housing, for the kids coming over from Latin America, kind of getting used to U.S. customs and cultures and different things. So we have a pretty robust off-field development network between education, mental skills, nutrition. So I'm a part of that group.
Cool. Yeah. Well, to kind of just follow again, for those who don't know, I see some familiar faces. So I shouldn't say faces. I see some familiar names, but excited to be here. So thanks again, Caleb, for having me. My role, I'm mental skills coordinator for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I'm going on year 2 right now, halfway through it. Prior to this, I was at a private boarding school in Florida, IMG Academy, and I spent 2.5 years there doing mental conditioning work. And then prior to that was getting my graduate school training in sports psychology from Cal State Fullerton. And then one stop prior was playing college baseball at Linfield. So was fortunate to know that the D3 baseball scene well, similar to Jeremy, and yeah, that kind of led me to where I'm at now, and getting a chance to be a part, collaborate with 2 other folks on our staff and provide the mental skill services for our players and staff across every level of our organization.
Great. So let's get started. So I'm going to give you a question that I feel like helps both your past experience into what you got to now. So it seems, whether you were a player, college, professional, or you worked for MLB, the Mets, whoever, I think you guys have seen a little bit of an evolution. So let's start talking about today's baseball player and how that has changed over time as it relates to their needs and their desires. There's no order. Any of you guys can go first.
I'll kick this one off. So, you'll learn, like I'm a big visual person. I like to try to see things visually. And so when I think about this question, I think of it almost along the lines of like a timeline. So we get our players when they come into professional baseball, it's just a snapshot of their lifespan. It's just their baseball careers, as we know, aren't going to last forever. At the same time, though, there's a lot of years and experiences that go into a player's development before they even enter into our organization. And I think in order to kind of understand today's baseball player, I think we have to take into account what their early childhood experiences are and what that environment is that they've kind of grown up in. And so I shared this on social media the other day, and it kind of, I think, is fitting. It's a Bruce Lee quote, and there's a clip of Bruce Lee, and he talks about if you pour water into a cup, the water will take the shape of the cup. If you pour water into a teapot, it will take the shape of a teapot. And I think that's a good analogy for how we operate as people. We adapt to the environments that we're in. And so I think you have to take into account the environment that players have experienced. If it's a guy getting drafted out of high school, it's their first 18 years of their life. If it's a guy coming out of college, it's the first 21 or so years of their life. And even for our Latin American players coming in, it's even a shorter stint. And so for me, when I think about, understanding today's ball player, I think you have to understand kind of the current culture that we're in. And so for me, I lean a lot on Dr. Jean Twangy's research in this area. She does a lot looking at Generation Z, or what she kind of calls iGen. And so this is not an exhaustive list, but a few of the characteristics that she references is that I think are important is, one is this is the generation that from the moment they're born till this current moment, technology has been ubiquitous, and it's been a key part of their lives. And so I think you see that now in professional baseball. There's more technology than ever before, and a lot of players are very comfortable with technology. And so I think we as staff, whether you're an on-the-field coach or in a support-based role or whatever your role might be, I think getting comfortable with technology and understanding how it's potentially a tool in your work and player development is key. I think another thing is interesting is how everything is so on demand and instant access. We can get whatever we want, right? Like I don't have to memorize things anymore. I just have to be resourceful and know what to search on Google. And players are really good at that. So I think at the same time, part of it too is understanding that players at any point can fact check anything that you say. And so you got to be very conscientious and be intentional with your words as a coach or as a practitioner. I think also to know that they can get all of that very instantly. And so a lot of that can be very entertainment driven. I'll use the example of, I don't know how many people on this call follow TikTok videos, but it's a prime example of this. My wife has recently got me scrolling through TikTok. I'm not embarrassed to say there's some pretty funny people in this world to follow on there, but I showed it to my mom, and her first comment was, the videos are too quick. But I think that speaks to this younger generation right now, as everything is quick, instant access, and short bite-size increments. And so I think as coaches, we have to take all of that into account in understanding who our current ball players are. And then finally, the one other thing is We know that through some research that players are expressing more emotional insecurity than ever before. I shouldn't say just players, but younger generations. And psychological safety is really critical for them. And so I think with that too, the need for mental health services and mental skills support has become even more apparent than ever before. And I think a prime example too is this morning, Michael Phelps is on the front page of ESPN, basically describing how much of a challenge the whole COVID-19 pandemic has been for him, and being very open and vulnerable about those experiences, and more athletes are doing that. So I think that's great because it's showing people growing up now that it's okay to talk about these things. So for me, this is long-winded. I already went over probably what I should have, but I take all that into account because that's all has a lot of influence on the guys when they enter into our organization.
Sure, Jeremy or Jen, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I think what's been really interesting for me to see as throughout my career in baseball so far has been how much more focused we are on the needs of today's players. Everything is more customized, it's more personalized. So kind of going along with like the on-demand stuff, it's not just that you can get it when you want, it's specifically customized to you, and teams are putting together individualized player plans, and there's a lot more focus on kind of the development work that goes into creating those players. So it's not just, let's get on the field and hit some grounders and shack some flies and head on in. Or it's not hours and hours in the cage. It's quality over quantity. I think we've learned how to work smarter and not necessarily harder, which helps a lot as well. And a lot of that has come with new technology. We know a lot more about how to develop athletes, what people need from a physical perspective, but I think we're also addressing more from a mental and off-field perspective as well, things that we didn't used to kind of think about. What I think is really interesting as well is you see this kind of across all industries, right? So organizations are a lot more people-focused as well. Big, tech corporations and some of the top organizations in the country and in the world. And that's being reflected in sports as well. So you kind of see that trickle down effect. And as, companies like Google and Apple are more focused on their employees, then sports look at that and they're like, wow, we can apply those same kind of ideas to our players as well. And then, the technology has been crazy. There was nothing like Blast and TrackMan and Rapsodo and all these things when I first started. And I remember, Quest Tech was like the umpire system to figure out, how the umpires were doing. And I remember when that came around. And so to see where we've gone since then has been amazing. And it literally changes every year, which has been really exciting and really fun to see as well.
As a former player, it's at first people were weary of starting a business, and in our case a nonprofit, as a former player, asking former and current players to work with us. Early on, we started this the day the Save America's Pastime Act came out. Early on, people were weary about who we are and what we're doing and our goals. And I start all these conversations with, I was very good at what I did. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to play for my childhood team. I'm very lucky for that. There were just some things while I was playing that I knew could have been better. And I love you, Jen. It's not about the player development department of the Mets. It's the system itself can be better and more conducive to the development of these players. And we see it every day. And all More Than Baseball is yes, we're a nonprofit, but we're a nonprofit because that allows us to work in this space with the teams and the players and be conducive to making it a better environment for these players to develop and recover and become better baseball players. And so when I was playing, it was difficult for me, someone who had a very low signing bonus, to access the things I needed that were going to help me perform better, right? I couldn't buy, granted, top of the line equipment wouldn't have made me hit better, but I was afraid to swing at an inside pitch because I knew I only had 2 bats left. And if my mindset going into a bat is I'm not swinging an inside pitch because I only have 2 left, it's not conducive to my performance and my development. Guys are so worried about, well, I can't slide today because these are my last cleats, or I can't do this because I can't afford another pair of batting gloves, or I can't afford, to play this game. For us, we don't argue saying, we don't scream from the rooftop saying, hey, you need to pay these players more. It's we bring that back and we say, what are things that we can do together, either more than baseball and the player, more than baseball and the team, to create a better environment for this player to develop and be a better player. And so for us as an organization, we do research and we conduct, we do assessments, and we make sure that the entire environment in which they play, they have the things that they need to help them play better. And so we are a tool for player development. Like I was telling Zach before, mental health coaching is something that we've put into the organization because there are things we've heard that players are afraid to go to their team's mental health coaches because if they're struggling with anything, it's going to get back to the team. We don't know if that's true or not, but the fact that there is an environment that may or may not be built on fear, I knew that more than baseball, it needed to be a place of refuge for players who all they are trying to do is devote their entire lives to becoming these Major League Baseball players. And their team may not be supporting them 100%. And it's of no detriment to the people in those organizations. It's the environment and the culture itself and the amount of players in that environment. And so, granted, cuts are inevitable. 1,000 players are pretty much going to lose their job over the next few months. And there is no symposium for minor leaguers. There is no assistance for coming into playing and financial guidance and the effects of that. And there's nothing for them when they leave either. And so working with Caleb and doing career transitioning, having the programs in place that we have, we're making sure that no guy falls between the cracks because there are so many players. And so from playing 2 years, even, it more than baseball has developed because of the inefficiencies that I saw in professional baseball.
Sure. So we are in a weird time, right? This current climate is not letting us watch or view or even just kind of enjoy on-field baseball. So this is probably something that when you guys took your role, you never prepared for, never ever thought would happen. But how can baseball players be taking full advantage of the opportunity that they have, being removed from the on-the-field work, to improve their on and off field selves?
I mean, I think this has been, difficult, not for all of us, not just the players, but the staff and the coaches and just, society in general. And I think what's really unique about this situation and kind of incredible is how it's affected so many people across the world. So, our players in the Dominican Republic are also at home and, businesses are closed and grocery stores have empty shelves. The same things we're dealing with here, they are dealing with there, or players in Colombia, or so it's a really, really unique time. I think for a lot of people, it's a good time for introspection. It's a good time for, you can still focus on some of the physical and mental aspects of your game, even though you're not all together. But it's also a good time to kind of just learn a little bit more about yourselves. I think we're so go, go, go all the time. And Jeremy can probably speak more to this, but when you're coming through the system to play, you got to be on the best high school or travel team, and then you got to go to the best college, and then you got to be on the best, get drafted, and it's just go, go, go all the time. I think you may kind of you don't always get off the treadmill and take that time and kind of start to look at yourself. And so I think this is kind of a good time for that because, you're more than just a baseball player. And it's a good idea to kind of see the other different sides of your identity. And then also, there are things going on that are kind of out of our hands. So a lot of teams or Major League Baseball suspended all the minor league contracts. Teams aren't required to pay their players past the end of the month. There's a lot of financial insecurity. It's a good time to kind of learn about, well, what do we do about this? What systems are in place, what support systems, both financially and otherwise. and how can I take care of myself? So it's definitely tough. It's not easy for any of us, but it is definitely a time for growth as well.
One of our players, one of our ambassadors actually, got released today. He was drafted last year in the 25th round, and he called me this morning and was like, I got released. And so in a time where these guys are already uncertain about when they're going to get on a field, they're also worried that they might lose their job. And this environment is not conducive to mental sanity. I lost it when I was playing. There were days where I just couldn't focus. There were days I just was so focused about they're going to release me, or I don't have the things I need, rather than focusing on the opportunity and the good fortune I had of actually playing professional baseball. I was more focused on the things I didn't have than on the things I did. And if I can do something to help a player, either American or Latin, that we can help provide him with things that are going to make it easier to play this game, then I've done my job. Our job is to make sure that if you love baseball, you love more than baseball, right? And we're making sure that communities have what they need to have baseball. We're making sure that the players have what they need, but we're also making sure that major league teams have a resource that they can call and use. And Jen has been great about this, because there are some questions that she has and she'll ask us, right? And there are some things that I hope we can do in the future to help a greater amount of their players. And we want to be this tool that comes in and works within the system to help these players. And so when I tell this kid, hey, I'm sorry you got released today, but now we have this program in place that's going to help you build a LinkedIn, build a resume, look for work, and utilize your value as a professional baseball player, that itself is a win, because 2 years ago there wasn't something. And so I think when you look holistically at this entire environment, 2 years ago, if this player would have gotten released, he's moving home, he has no hope for a better future, he doesn't know how to utilize his professional baseball experience and leverage that to his advantage. And he goes back with no money and he goes, I have no idea what I'm going to do. My entire identity was taken away from me. So the players we bring in, we talk to them about how baseball is not who you are, it's what you do. It brings you joy, but if it's taken away from you, there should be things you've already put in place that can either help bring you money or help fulfill that passion for you. And so more than just helping these guys get bats, it's making sure that these guys are taken care of as people. Is it the White Sox job to make sure this guy has a job when he's done playing with the White Sox? No, but there is a system in place now that can help these players when they're done playing, even in the off season, to make money. Like guys are making, less than $10,000 a year, but to make sure that we've heard one organization we've talked to, and somebody who works in player development, and he's like, we want to make sure our people are becoming better people. And that was the first time I heard it from the big league side, to say like they actually care about who these players are and want them 12 months a year, 24 hours a day to become better people. They want to help the system that we would hope that it become over the next couple of years to become all 30 teams assist with that. And so I felt bad for this player who lost his job, but many, many more are going to come, and we have to be prepared for that as an organization too.
Yeah, I think I could echo a lot of what Jennifer and Jeremy are referencing there. I think, I'll share from our perspective working within an organization, what we're kind of currently doing. Again, fortunate to work with two others on our staff. And I think when people ask us what's been our approach during this whole pandemic and kind of being a support system for our players, I go back to this idea of a continuum. Like on one end, we have players who they haven't missed a beat. They're still working out. Granted, some of them are getting really creative, and they're creating their own at-home gyms. They're creating their own hitting facilities in their backyards, or going somewhere. I won't name any names, but I'd heard a story of one jumping a fence to go play somewhere where they probably weren't supposed to, like that's been some of the cool stories that we've kind of have heard. And you've got that end of the spectrum, and guys who are staying disciplined and still going strong in terms of the baseball and on-field focus. And then you've got the whole other end of the spectrum, as Jen alluded to. You have some guys who are really struggling. There's a lot of uncertainty. They're getting asked questions from their family members or people in their lives that they don't feel like they have answers to, and anywhere in between that spectrum. So for us as a department, we've tried to just meet players where they're at, and maybe most importantly, try to give them permission to be wherever they're at. There are going to be moments and days that are not as good as others, and that's really normal and okay. And so I think to kind of spin this now from the player's perspective, it's doing a lot of the things that Jen and Jeremy have talked about. It's giving yourself permission to be wherever you're at on that spectrum. And I think to add to what they talked about with the identity stuff, I think it is a great time to explore other elements of your life that you may not get as much of an opportunity to invest time and energy into at this time of the year. I think that's been some of the coolest conversations with guys of late have been, what's homeschooling been like? How have things been, spending more time with the family, or how have you surprised yourself in the last 2 months? And I think that gets at along those lines of, we can talk all we want about sport isn't what you do, and or sport is what you do, it's not who you are, and this identity. I think something that's really important to that is, okay, how do you help somebody develop this more well-rounded identity? And for us, I think a lot of that comes back to helping guys identify their values and identify what matters to them. And I think as a coach, as a practitioner, or as anybody, the questions that you ask people reflect what you value. And so I think if your go-to question right now to guys is, hey, how many swings are you getting in? Or how you feeling physically, or anything like that, like those are okay. But just know that those questions are going to reflect what you're valuing. And I think it goes to what they've just described as getting to know players beyond who they are on the field. And right now, I think as coaches, as practitioners, it's really important for us to kind of help guide players in that particular way.
Awesome. So you guys talked a little bit about this in the first and second question, but I want to keep going with it, which is traditionally we see across all sports, there's so much time and money spent on nutrition, strength and conditioning, the focus on video, watching video, understanding the playbook, reading it, depending on the sport. But there's less talk about the person behind the player. And, Jeremy alluded to this. Zach, you kind of mentioned this as well. But what is being done either in your role or in organizations that you see? You could talk about past places you worked, and what can be done for baseball players coming through the minor leagues.
Yeah, I'll go first. I don't know, Zach, how many mental skills or people are in your department?
So we have 3 total in our
department. And how many total players do you guys have in the organization?
A lot. 300 or so.
Yeah. And so for us, I look at that and I say, it's not Zach's fault. It's just resources aren't plentiful for minor leaguers, right? And if we wanted to help develop the best player we can, both Latin and American, we have to provide them with the opportunity to gain these resources and this knowledge when they're ready, but also just have it available for them. And I don't think 300 guys are going to call you every single day and ask for a question, but I think that communication is really, really tough when you're trying to give your energy and all your, 100% of your effort to potentially 300 guys who could use that help. And so, from what I'm doing, it's just providing these resources at scale. Can we make sure that these guys have these mental health resources when Zach goes, hey, I have 300 guys or, 150 guys in the full season levels. And, there's a question I can't answer. I want to be able to provide an answer for him. I want to be able to, if he has a question or needs help with one of these players in a mental health capacity, I want to be able to provide that resource to Zach. And I also want to be able to provide it to the player too. And so when we look at the amount of players, I think it's around 6,000, subtract the bottom, the short season teams that are going to get cut at the end of the year. When we look at the 5,000 or whoever left over for 3 or 4 or even 10 mental skills staff per team, are they able to fulfill all that these players need? And at that point, is there someone else that can come in and help, with that? And in terms of equipment, in terms of housing, Latin guys are having to find their own housing, during the season, and they don't necessarily speak the language, and it's tough for them. And that's why you hear that guys are sleeping 7, 8, 9 to an apartment on air mattresses, because this is all they know. And for them, it's all they can afford or all they can do. And we have to make sure that these guys have the resources to know that can change. And if that changes, and if they have a mattress, right, they might play better. Who knows? But I'm resulting to the fact that, and I believe wholeheartedly, when you have happy employees, they will perform better at their job. And that's the whole mission of what I'm doing. And so from this perspective, I think having the resources available, if you're going to have 190 or, 250 minor leaguers, we have to be able to provide them with the resources, at when they need it most, like now.
Yeah, one of the things that, to think about this question that you asked, Caleb, of, what can be kind of done or what is being done. I thought Jen actually hit a really good point too earlier when she said, talking about the coaches and the staffs, and how I think you're seeing that a lot more now, more maybe than ever, of how much coaches are investing in getting to know players as a person first. And so I think the coaches play a really important role in this whole conversation. And I think that's something, there's been a ton of these Zoom webinars, conferences, not just in the baseball realm, but all over the place. And I think if you kind of listen to what a lot of what's been shared on these, one of the underlying threads is, and pretty much all of them, they reference the importance of relationships. And I think that's something that is a very foundational component to all of this. And again, I think that's something, as Jeremy kind of alluded to, I think we're very aware in our organization that the three of us, we can have an impact on our players, but there's a ton of power when we can also leverage and empower and work through our coaches as well to create that depth of impact. And I think that's the key piece for us, and how we've approached this is leveraging our coaches in this process. And I think one of the things that you're seeing again more and more is how much coaches are recognizing, you have coaches right now who are checking in with players and again, asking those questions beyond just the on the field stuff. And thankfully, I think for us, I said this kind of a couple months ago when we first transitioned remotely, that this pandemic it's an opportunity for us to pressure test our culture. And what I meant in referencing that was, if we start doing things now that we're working remotely that we weren't doing a couple months ago, then we probably weren't on the right track with where we wanted to be. And I think that's been one thing that's been really cool about our organization is we've tried to continue to do those things that we had been doing in person in spring training with our guys. We're just now doing it through tech. We're doing it now remotely. And so I think that was a great point that she brought up earlier. I think one of the other things that we have tried, at least in how we've approached this, is leveraging the voices of some of our major league players as well. And there's such a thing, we talk a lot about resilience and how important that is for people to develop. There's research looking into vicarious resilience, which basically means that you can learn from examples of others who have demonstrated resilience and bounce back or kind of navigated uncertainty and shown that. So for us, one of the things that we've been trying to do amidst the pandemic is create opportunities for our minor league players, hear from our major league guys about mindset, about how they have adjusted to transitioning to work, being quarantined and all of that. So I think that's something that we try to leverage a lot of is the veterans in our organization who we know have a rich amount of experience, much like what Jeremy can contribute with his playing background, as well as the coaches and the staff. So for us, we try to leverage all of that in our work, just because we know that they're gatekeepers to the players.
Yeah, to echo what's been said, I think a lot of, I love, Zach, what you said about relationships. And I think that I've noticed more and more is huge when it comes to kind of how you develop the players and how you provide what's best for them. Because once you know them as a person, you're going to want to do right by them. You're going to want to do what's best by them when they're not just a number or their stats or their latest at bat. And I think because of that, because we're seeing them more as a whole person, that's where you get individualized player plans. You get it's a different approach instead of just looking at straight numbers. And I think that's where a lot of the soft skills come in as well. And so what you and I do and what Jeremy does, you can't always measure that. There's not always a quantitative way to say, I made this person that much better today, and here's why, or here's how. There's no scale of, okay, now they can do their taxes. Now they can, they know how to control themselves on the mound, control their breathing. Like it just doesn't, it's not always measurable, but yet we still see an importance of it. And I think that's what's really important is looking at it as the whole person. And then kind of to echo what you were saying, Zach, too, about taking from the major leaguers, I think what's really interesting and really cool for somebody like Jeremy right now is that it used to be that you would go through the minor leagues and then forget everything that happened in the minor leagues. And once you became a big leaguer, you were a big leaguer, and it was a whole different world. And, you have to go through the exact same thing that I did, and you have to struggle, and you have to eat mac and cheese and PB&J every day because that's how I did it. And that's just how it's done. And I think we're getting away from that. Both organizations and the players themselves, and players see how hard it was for them to get to where they are at, and they're more willing to do more for the people that are coming up behind them. And I think, Jeremy, I forget exactly who has donated to your campaign in the offseason or during this time, and I know Daniel Murphy is one of them. But just getting these big leaguers that are remembering what it was like to be a minor leaguer, I think that is huge. And knowing that it's hard, like even on the club side, we know that it's hard. We know that it is not easy for these guys to get where they're going. And so the more that we can do to support them, not just on the field, but off the field, that is going to make them better ball players, and that's going to make them better major leaguers. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want major leaguers. We want a World Series, but we also want good people. And I think, you see it in how much money is spent on nutrition now that was never spent on nutrition before. Hiring people like us, education staffs, even housing, teams are building their own housing in the States that never really happened before outside of Pirate City. And so it's really nice to see teams are taking a well-rounded investment in their player and not just what they're doing on the field.
Great. So as we go into the fourth question, and right before we do Q&A, we are going to see if we can go over a little bit for those who just thought this would go till 8:30 or 5:30, wherever you are. You can hang on if you would like. So the last question from me. In each of your roles, you are positioned to serve and help minor league and major league baseball players. What do you view as, number one, the biggest obstacles? And on the flip side, what do you view as the strongest points of emphasis, depending on your role and your expertise in understanding today's baseball player?
So I think one of my biggest obstacles is there's one of me at the club. And so I work very closely with our mental skills staff. I work with our nutrition staff, our education staff, our player development staff. But at the end of the day, there's only one life skills coordinator. And so there's a lot of things. I touch most of the players in the organization, which is phenomenal. But there's a lot of them. And so taking the time to get to know them all, get them to trust me, because coming into a new organization, you have to prove yourself. You have to prove your worth. Just showing them what I can do for them and what I can help for them. But I think forming those relationships and getting to know them as people, it allows me to help them more, and it allows me to be a better support for them and be able to meet them where they're at and help them achieve the things that they want to achieve on and off the field. I think in this time, what's been really nice is hearing from so many guys and reaching out to so many guys, but also just knowing that they know to come to me. You know, I've only been in this job. This is starting my second year with the organization. And so I'm very grateful that I've made that much of an impression and that I've built up that much trust with them. But also that, you know, there are still ways to help. And at the end of the day, being a part of everyone's journey, however big or small that might be, is really gratifying.
Yeah, for us, for more than base. So Adam Wainwright donated $250,000 in a player grant program to help Cardinals players. So in a need-based way, based on priority, you know, their amount of debt, their signing bonus, their years playing, their family members supported, we were able to give a grant to Cardinals minor leaguers. One major leaguer actually qualified for the grant because of the amount of debt he had, because of his monthly income, and because of how many years he's playing. He actually qualified for a low priority. It was around, I think it was around like $450 or $500. But if a major leaguer qualified for a grant from a nonprofit in this space, imagine the struggles that your average minor leaguer is going through, right? And if he has all of the resources he needs at his disposal, imagine what a vast majority of these guys are going through. And so, you know, when I love talking to Jen, I love that we've, you know, known each other for like 4 years now. And I love to see the impact that she's had in her organization, because what she's doing really does matter. And it leads to more happiness for these players and will ultimately lead in better performance for them. That's the point. That's why we do all this. That's why we work for these organizations, to make sure that these guys have what they need to play at the best of their ability, which will help the minor league clubs. And we can get into that confusion later. And then the major league clubs, who will ultimately benefit whether or not these minor leaguers make it to the big leagues. But Jen, I don't know how many life skills coordinators there are in baseball, but it might be one.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one with that specific title. I know some teams have people, every team has somebody that or has people that do what I do. It's just not all kind of separated out into one specific role. So some of it's handled by the athletic trainers or mental skills or education or things like that.
There are so few people in baseball that are focused on the daily struggle of playing at these lower levels. And granted, we know that less than 10% are going to make it to the major leagues. And so when you look at the entirety of minor league baseball, the value that each player has is that he might be a small investment and he might make it to the big leagues with just a little bit more focus on his recovery or his development. And if he sleeps on a mattress, is he going to be able to play better? And you can look at all these different factors, like spending more money on nutrition. We've heard the Brewers have done a phenomenal job in their nutrition. I know that the Indians have done a good job. I know that a few other organizations are putting money towards nutrition. Cool. That means that More Than Baseball doesn't have to work on nutrition for them. But what about mental health? Zach said that he had 3 mental health coaches. I know the Royals only have 2 for their entire minor league system. Okay, so then we can help with mental health. And so we're trying to fill in the holes of this system, working with the organizations and working with the people to make sure that, you know, if Jen needs something, I will make sure that I can provide that for her. And if other staff and other organizations see the value that we have, if the Marlins see that we can bring value to their players, I would hope the Marlins invest in what we're doing, both the time and the energy and the resources to make sure that by working with us, we can provide a better environment for their players. And so for me, it's that simple. We have the research, we have the knowledge, we have the time, and we have the energy and the want to make sure that every player has what he needs to develop at the best of their ability and play at the best of their ability. And then when they're done playing, to make sure they can transition into something, that's valuable to them, that they're not homeless or not feeling like they lost everything. More Than Baseball can be this place where we help them while they're playing, and then we help them find something that they can turn their passion to after they're done. And for me, the biggest obstacle was changing public perception of what we do, and making sure that people understood that if you love baseball, you love us, because we want to make it the best environment possible by working with minor league communities. Some are now going to lose their teams. By working with international communities. I'm on the Israeli Olympic baseball team. We're trying to build a field over there. We're trying to make sure that baseball grows over there. Same with Ghana wants a team, and Venezuela needs help with its fields. How can we make this environment of baseball more conducive to learning and excitement and energy, and make baseball fun again? And I think by believing in what we do, there's so many different angles of how we can impact baseball, that all we need is just Adam Wainwright gave us a chance. Daniel Murphy gave us $100,000 to give us a chance. And I can't thank them enough for speaking on what we do, but it takes more than just a handful of major leaguers. It takes the system itself to acknowledge and respect the fact that it needs to change, and people are doing their part to change it.
Yeah, so I think in terms of obstacles, there's a couple things that come to mind. I think one, there's a difference between being a resource wanted and a resource given. And I think what you're seeing is in Major League Baseball, pretty much all 30 teams have resources to some capacity. Again, it looks different for each team. The numbers changes, the titles are different, the emphases within those are all different. And so I think we, at least from our perspective, I think we're working towards, we're getting closer and closer to where we want to be, I think, in terms of having the resources given within our organization. I think the next level, though, is how do you get people to want to pursue or take advantage of those resources too? And I think some of it speaks to a little bit of what Jeremy referenced there too, is like, what's the perception of whether it's mental skills, whether it's life skills, whether it's mental health. And like, I think that's something for us, like one of the challenges is even just getting everybody on the same page of what it is that we do, what resources we can provide, and viewing our relationship with the players as a partnership in that regard. And it's not just us throwing things at them in terms of information. It's we're getting their feedback and taking that in. And I think that's really important. And this isn't to by any means pick out Jeremy, but like, for example, he was like, mental health, like we don't do mental health. Like that's not the three of us in our department. That's not our background. That's not our skill sets. We have three other clinicians in our organization who are available to our players to provide the mental health services and stuff. And that's, again, that we see that all the time, that no matter how many times we have tried to emphasize our approach to players and stuff, and to coaches, that's an ongoing challenge for us, is something that we have to keep coming back to. So I would say that those are some of the big obstacles, is the difference between a resource wanted and given, and then changing that perception and getting everybody on the same page as to what it is available to them, and what it means. I think for what can help us, again, this is just our approach so far as an organization and as a department. We leverage the staff and the coaches. To us, those are the people that are with our players on a day-to-day basis. They're the ones who are, quote unquote, in the trenches with them. And so for us, if we can work to and through them, thankfully, this isn't the expectation for me either. Like, I'm not going to have an amazing relationship with 300 players in our organization. I'm going to constantly be working towards that on a day-to-day basis. And ideally, like, yeah, I would love to have that. But that's why we have 2 other mental skills coaches. That's why we have a sports medicine team. That's why we have coaches too, is to know that I don't have a big enough ego to think that my voice is going to connect with every single player in our organization. But what I do have confidence in is I can find the person who they do trust. And I think what both Jen and Jeremy have talked about, which is, I think, really important, and it's something that hopefully is continuing to work in the right direction, is organizations partnering and collaborating with people outside of the organization too. And I think that's going to be really important, because you're seeing that a lot in other facets of the game. Jeremy and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. You have people who are going and they're training at hitting facilities, or they're going and doing to a lab and doing biomechanic assessments and stuff. Like, it's great. Even if you do have that stuff in-house, that's great. But it's also still, I think, meeting again the players where they're at, and trying to learn from those people that they are reaching out to, and hopefully building those relationships. Because I think in theory, we all want the same thing. We all want the player to succeed and reach their full potential. And we may be coming at it from different angles. There may be different outcomes, but I think that's really what we're all working towards. And so for us, I think that's kind of at least how we've approached it, and where we've found some success with it thus far.
Awesome. Well said. I think, just how you ended that, in terms of we all want the same thing. That's why we're on this panel. That's why you guys wanted to join. And that's why you guys wanted to talk about today's baseball player, because we are in a crazy time. We are able to kind of offer our services and our expertise to these baseball players to help them grow as a person first. So that was it for my questions. What we're going to do now is we're going to open the floor for questions. So if you want to submit them through the chat, I think Cam has some questions that we're going to lead off with.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb, and yeah, love to hear other people's questions. Just to each of you, to start off with, thanks for some really insightful comments. I think this is so timely. Caleb and I have been talking about this for quite some time, but Zach, I wanted to touch a little bit on this idea of resilience, and particularly in times of trauma and what we're seeing. Resilience comes out of these opportunities. So for each of you, and I'll start off with you, Zach, just because you mentioned how important resilience is, but what are your thoughts on, if you had a magic wand and at the end of this thing, if you said abracadabra, bingo, what would you like to see, in terms of moving the needle forward?
Ooh, that's a good question, Cam. So this is probably a case of the recency bias for me, where it's something that I've read recently, but it's had a big shift in my mindset on some things. There's a book that's called The Upside of Stress, which I don't know how many people on here have read, but I highly recommend it. It has quickly moved up to my top 5 all-time book recommendations. And one of the central tenet of this book is stress for pretty much all our whole lives has had we've had a toxic relationship with it. We viewed stress as this negative thing, this thing to avoid. When in reality, through a lot of research, they've found that stress is actually really helpful. Like, it's actually a really good thing. Even super, traumatic experiences, which, yes, there can definitely be debilitating stress, but even through traumatic experiences, changing your relationship and your perspective on stress is really important. And so where I would kind of go with this is, I think stress is directly related to resilience. And I think in order to foster resilience, which we would kind of coin as like an attribute that we are working towards, I think one of the hows in how you go about doing that is to change your perspective on stress. And so that's actually been something that we have been talking a lot more about with players, sharing more content, even with our coaches too, when it comes to designing practice environments, of helping them understand how important stress is, and how we can create an environment that not only challenges players, but also provides the appropriate amount of support too, which is a really key component as well. And so I would say that would probably be for me. I cannot take credit for this quote. I don't unfortunately remember where I heard it from, but it has really resonated with me for many years now, is this notion that perspective is the only thing that can change the outcome without changing any of the facts. Right now, there's a lot of variables outside of our control. There's a lot of things that are occurring that we don't have a lot of influence over, but what we do know is the outcome of a situation is a combination of the event itself and how we choose to respond. And so I think that for me is one thing I would hope is, I think we're all experiencing stress in different ways, but you really only stress about things that you care about. And so stress is a great time to reconnect with your values and to connect with, just remind yourself that whatever you're experiencing stress, it's because it's something that matters to you. So for me, that has been a major message of emphasis of late.
Cool. Thanks, Zach. And I put a reference up there. Hopefully that's the right side of upside of stress there. How about you, Jennifer? What about, you talk a lot about trust, and it sounds like you've done an amazing job there. If you had the magic wand, how would you strike it? What would you get?
That's a great question. I think, for me, it's all about empowering guys. And so, I don't want to do things for them, because if I did everything for them, I would never sleep or eat or anything. But also, that's not my role. My role isn't to do things for them. My role is to teach them and empower them. And so I think for me, kind of the magic wand for building trust and building relationships is giving my guys the tools to be successful. And showing them that they have it within themselves to do whatever it is they need to do on the field, off the field. They can handle, adversity when it, something as simple as opening a bank account in a different country, or finding housing or a host family. We do a lot of host families at Cleveland Indians. And so, empowering them to be okay with living with this new family and getting to know, some people and asking for help. I think that's a big thing, whether it's help with something that Zach or Jeremy can help them with, or even just, hey, can I get help with my taxes? Can I get help with housing? Can I, I think knowing that they have those resources there, and that we're not asking for help is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's what we're there for. And again, we're not going to do it for them. We're going to help them do what they need to do. But yeah, I think for me, the magic wand would be empowering them to succeed.
Cool. And how about you, Jeremy? You've got the big system. You're wrestling the big beast here. How would you attack it if you had the magic wand?
I think just what I'm doing is making sure that I can provide them. You can lead a horse to water, right? Mm-hmm. And so if there's access to, and right now we're building a portal where like a LinkedIn style, or even it looks like a Facebook, where guys can ask questions, guys can seek resources, guys can find answers in a place that's designed for them. It just makes it easier to play minor league baseball. And if it makes it easier, they can focus more of their time on performance and development and recovery. And so where, Jen is absolutely right. I don't want to do everything for players, but I want it so simple to use more than baseball that they come in, they sign up for the service, they can access those resources that day. And where I think we're most valuable is that we help them. Yes, if they're tired of eating McDonald's after games, right? Or they're eating Golden Corral and their team hasn't provided them with enough nutrition. Like when I was playing with the Mets, it was really bad in my first year eating. Jen comes in and people go, oh, there's a coordinator here today. They actually, Jen was just like, where's the snacks? And then the next day we had snacks. It shouldn't take Jen to come in and say we have snacks to provide snacks. It shouldn't.
You had a lot of Golden Corral in Kingsport.
Yes, we did. Yeah, yes. Yeah, we did. I had a stuffed pepper maybe 15 nights in a row. And the thing is that it should be available for all players. If they want to eat properly, we should have that available for them. We've partnered with food companies that give their food at a discount. There's a macronutrient company, a company that has freeze-dried food. You put boiling water in it, you shake up the bag, 10 minutes later, it's there for you. If guys are tired of spending money to go eat, they have this resource for them. We have a relationship with Birdman Bats. They get certified bats at a discount. Now we have Caleb, who is devoting his time in his career to grit and glue and career transitioning. That's incredibly valuable to have. Mental health and mental skills, obviously something that can be brought to more players at scale. It's just providing all of these resources to players, and we're not doing it around minor league baseball or major league baseball or the teams. We're just filling in the holes with what we see is necessary to provide for them, in the hopes that he gets one more hit a week, in the hopes that he gets one more strikeout a week. Because if he sleeps on a mattress, he's going to feel better the next day, have more energy, and have the motivation and the want and the desire to say, I can give it 100% today, instead of saying, oh, my back hurts and I slept on an air mattress again and woe is me. I don't have that motivating factor. And so for us, we just make sure that if guys need something, they can access that resource in 2 steps: sign up and get it. And now when everybody's going to be in the organization after the player grant program finishes, they're going to have access to the portal, be in the portal. If they need something, they access what they need. If they can't find it, they ask a question. And it's simple. And we want to make sure every player that gets drafted is mandated to use More Than Baseball. That's kind of our overarching goal, is that we work with minor league baseball, major league baseball, the union, and the teams to make sure that people know we're here and people can seek refuge and have resources at their disposal through us if the team doesn't provide it.
So, Jeremy, we'll go back around, because there's maybe 3 or 4 different angles on this question of dealing with resistance, whether it's the culture, whether it's, the misperception or stigmas about just this whole, move. And what I hear the 3 of you saying is, if we have this conversation in 12 months' time, there's not going to be 3 of you doing it or 3 of you in an organization. There's going to be a multiplier effect. There's just more of you doing this. But how do you guys deal with the no, we don't need that? The misperception that what you guys are doing is sort of a nice to have, not the underlying thing that this is in order for us to proceed, we've got to do this. We've got to have more people doing what you guys are doing.
Right. I think it comes in two ways. If we get every player utilizing the resources we have for them, we know that there's value in it, because they wouldn't use it if they didn't have value in it. And then we can come to the teams and say, yes, we provide these resources and we can make sure that these guys have them, but they need these resources because the environment itself is not conducive to their development. And so More Than Baseball is designed to go into that organization. For a month, we want to assess. Second part, we want to help program, work with their staff to help develop a plan. And then third, implement. And with this plan, we can go in and make sure that every environment, with our research and with our team that we've built, we can make sure that no matter what team, if the Rangers go, we do nutrition really well, but we want to make sure that everything else is conducive to their environment. Well, then bring More Than Baseball in and be that place. So if we're making sure that all the players have what they need and then are available to work with the major league team, well, then it's a win-win for everybody, because we have the knowledge and the desire and the want to make sure that it's a better environment for the players, because we want them to play better, and so do the major league teams. And so it doesn't ruffle any feathers. It doesn't go against anybody. Because of that, we're not suing. We're not trying to form a union. Oops, I can't say the U word. We're not trying to do any of that stuff, because that's not conducive to helping this player today. Helping this player today means giving him the resources he needs to play better. But if it comes down to we make sure that with the way we speak about baseball, it's not about that other stuff. If you love baseball, you love us.
So you're really connecting it to better players, better performance, more wins. And I know pretty much in sport, like to hear that. How about you, Zach? How do you respond to, nah, not interested? That's fluffy stuff.
Sorry, can you say it one more time for me, Cam?
What's,
The original question.
what's your approach to the resistance within the culture, or people just saying, "No, I'm not really open to your approach to I just have to hit the ball better. I just have to throw better. I just have to train harder, and I'll be better."
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I think one thing I heard this from somebody in our field, and it's probably a bit of a sliding scale of, you're going to have generally a third of players that are going to be really bought in, really interested in mental skills, or really whatever kind of other space it might be. You're going to have a third of players that are going to be very resistant to it, and then you're going to have a third that are kind of on the fence. And so for us, I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, we try to just meet them wherever they're at in that space. And, I think of it with like our major league players, for example. There's not going to be a whole lot of things that I share with them that they probably haven't already learned through their personal experiences. Like they've, through their experiences, they've learned a lot of these skills. And so with those players in particular, I just try to leverage their expertise. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, we really view it as a partnership where I don't know what it's like to be on a mound in front of 40,000 people in a major league stadium, but what we do know is mental skills, and we can kind of maybe create some connection points. And so for us, I try to leverage their experience with that, and then and it probably goes back to, hopefully it doesn't seem like just the default answer, but I try to leverage whoever in our organization that player trusts. And if it's something that we can filter through somebody else, even if it's, I joke with our trainers that, whether you signed up for it or not, you all a lot of times are having a lot of mental skills conversations, because when somebody experiences an injury, that obviously can be a very vulnerable time. And those players, you're the person there in the moment for them to process too. So I lean a lot on those individuals and try to collaborate with them.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate your response. And I know you may have to drop off here, but so thanks very much. We'll come to you, Jennifer. But Zach, awesome response, man. Thanks very much. So Jennifer, final word from you. Tell us, if you had the magic bullet, because Jeremy, I think, and Zach have given us some great responses here, and you guys have a huge task ahead of you. And I think, particularly for you, Jennifer, in what is obviously a very male-dominated sport, you're coming in clearly doing a very good job. What would you like to see happen as we come out of this lockdown to make sure that Major League Baseball and sport in general is a better place?
I think it's a really good question. I think what's been really awesome to see is that as baseball has become more than just what's on the field, it's allowed more opportunities for people from all sorts of different backgrounds. So, whether it used to be that if you didn't play baseball, then how could you work in a front office? And it's not like that anymore. And so that allows men and women who have never played baseball. I grew up playing softball. So, it's not, I love the game. But it's kind of made it more open, the industry as a whole more open to different backgrounds. We have a lot of sports science people that don't know anything about baseball or don't know that much about baseball, but they know about biomechanics, or they know about data analysis, or, all sorts of different things. And because all of that is more important, or all that is just as important as what's going on the field, you can teach the baseball part of it. And I think there's not this, if you didn't play, you didn't sit in a dugout, you didn't sit in a clubhouse, you don't know what you're doing. But I also think what's great, and what I've really enjoyed seeing over the last few years, is how supportive people are of each other, and how people champion each other. So I have an amazing squad of women across the industry, and we try to, pick each other up and share achievements when different women are featured in different places. And I think that's really important. And it's not just for women, it's for all of us in the game. I think that baseball historically has been a little bit, it's kind of a old white man's game, and it's a little old fashioned sometimes. But I think we're getting a lot better. And I think what's been really nice to see is just how supportive everyone is of each other. And, if, again, at the end of the day, it comes down to trust. And if my players trust that I'm going to do a good job and I'm going to help them out, then it doesn't matter my gender or my background or anything like that.
Awesome, guys. So much good stuff. Caleb, thanks for bringing everyone together, and Jennifer, Jeremy, and I know Zach had to jump off, but really great stuff. Interestingly, we had a webinar earlier today on introspection and self-awareness. So, Jen, I'm writing down, great, tics, and you hit the nail on the head, because we've had this conversation of transition from a bunch of different perspectives. We had one of my colleagues from the USOPC, from the Olympics team sport a couple of months ago. We had someone speaking it from a youth perspective, and now to hear it from the professional ranks is so insightful. And I applaud you guys on a huge task ahead of you. But I think Zach mentioned, in terms of collaboration, any way we can work together, I think this is why we wanted to host this one. And Caleb, credit to you for getting these guys together. So on behalf of everyone online, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much for having us. This was awesome.
Very cool. Very cool.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, just to wrap it up, guys, again, thanks for everyone being online. And like I mentioned, we've got a bunch of resources out there. We've got mental health's a big one. Nutritionist was on back in April, Karen Freeman, who's a former dietitian from the San Diego Chargers. One of my old mentors, Tim McLaren, 6-time Olympic medal winning coach and athlete in the sport of rowing. And then, as I mentioned, John Crawley there from the Olympic Committee, talking about athlete development. So we'll send you an evaluation, and please let us know if you've got any questions, because we'd love to keep you a part of this conversation. So thanks again for everybody, and for joining us tonight, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.